Hare Krishna. Give me 6 hours to chop down a tree, and I will spend the first 4 sharpening the axe. Abraham Lincoln. The parable of how a woodcutter spent hours and hours trying to cut down a tree with a blunt axe is something which we have all heard, probably. And at one level, it may seem childish. Who would be so foolish as to cut with a blunt axe? Who would think that spending time on sharpening the axe is time wasted? It's common sense that if we spend time sharpening the axe, we will be able to cut much better. Yes, in terms of the particular example, it is common sense. But when it is applied to our life, it is not, the sense is not that common. What do we mean by sharpening the axe? What is the tree that we are trying to break down? What is the axe actually? Whatever it is that we are trying to do in our life, if we compare our life to a wood cutting operation, we all have different trees to cut down. We have different responsibilities to meet, different targets to achieve. We have different dreams to fulfill. And whatever be the specifics, the axe that we use for all this is our consciousness. To be focused is to be empowered. To be distracted is to be disempowered. Whether a person is playing a sports like chess, whether a person is studying, whether a person is practicing or performing music, whether a person is trying to date to form a relationship, whether a person is giving a job interview, whatever a person is doing, whatever we may be doing, we can do it effectively when we are focused. If we are disfocused, if we are distracted, then we can't do things well. So the sharpening of the axe of our consciousness means that we learn to focus, to concentrate. And some people, we may say, they concentrate so well. They just sit down to study and they become immersed in their studies. And some students, they sit down to study and they get immersed in everything other than studies. They try to clean up the desk, they try to get something to eat, they look up the notifications on their mobile, they try to clean up the bookshelf, they suddenly remember something, they start making covers for their books, they do everything except studies. So they just get distracted. So is it that the capacity to concentrate or the inability to concentrate is something which we are just born with? Yes, we may be born with different levels of capacity to concentrate. And also, it is that we all have different areas in which you can concentrate more and different areas in which you can concentrate less. But the fact is, whatever be our concentration capacity in a particular area, we all can enhance it. And that increasing our focus, enhancing our capacity to focus, that actually is our sharpening of the axe. So if we don't spend a due amount of time sharpening the axe, if a student sits down to study but the mind is running here and there and everywhere, student tries to study, they may be in front of the book for 1 hour, but nothing goes in the head. But instead, if they could just take out some time to calm themselves, to focus themselves, then that would give them tremendous power. Now, what can we do to sharpen the axe of our consciousness? How can we increase our capacity to focus, our capacity to concentrate? Firstly, there may be various practical means which we may do. Some people say, breathe deeply, sit in a erect posture, think about the importance of what you are doing, and all these can help in focusing. And we should do these things also. But more important is to look at our underlying worldview. When our worldview is materialistic and material pleasures are the goal of our life, then anything that requires application, that requires abstinence from material pleasures, appears too demanding. It is materialism, and especially uncontrolled material desires, sensual desires. Eat this, watch this, touch this, taste this. These kind of desires, they distract us. The materialistic mind is a highly distracted mind. The Bhagavad Gita tells us that when we have a materialistic worldview, its 16th chapter, 11th and 12th verses say that our desires, they become like shackles, and our consciousness becomes pulled in various directions by these shackle-like desires, and we just lose the capacity to focus. The more we change our worldview, the more we adopt a spiritual worldview, the more we study spiritual texts like the Bhagavad Gita, which help us to understand that we are at our core spiritual beings and that our life's ultimate purpose is spiritual growth, it's spiritual fulfillment, then we get the inner conviction to focus our consciousness on that which will help us to grow spiritually. And spirituality is not just about intellectual understanding. It is also about practices. There are practices of meditation, such as mantra meditation, which help us to focus our consciousness. The Bhagavad Gita in the 6th chapter says that wherever the mind wanders, bring it back. So during meditation, when we exercise our concentration muscles, the mind wanders, we bring it back to the sacred sound of the mantra. It wanders, we bring it back. This exercising our capacity to concentrate, it enables us to develop our concentration muscles, our concentration capacity. So both adopting spiritual practices and cultivating a spiritual worldview, they help us to counter distraction at the root, and they help us to build concentration in a dramatically, wonderfully increased way. And thus, we can, by sharpening our acts of consciousness, remove the rust of materialism that distracts us, and then we can cut down whichever trees we wish to. Whatever it is that we know is important for us, we can purposefully focus and productively achieve by keeping our consciousness sharp through spiritual understanding and spiritual practices. Thank you. Hare Krishna.